Hi, welcome to Misaligned Learning. I'm Jackie. Today we're going to talk about Maya 2023's interface and some basic navigation to get you started. All right, so up here are going to be our menus. Click on those. We also have some nested menus whenever you see an arrow like this. And if you ever see a double dotted line, that just gives you the option to click and release on that, and then it'll pop it out. Now our menus are going to be pertaining to whatever menu set that we're in. So down here we can control our menu sets. And you'll see as I click through, the first menu items are going to remain the same, but it's the rest of our menu items that are going to change. If you ever want to access all of them, just hold down the space bar in your viewport and you'll see all menus available here, even if they're not currently in view. And then you can still release on any of these double dotted lines if you want to use that pop-up feature. All right, let's go over continuing on this line. This is our status line. So we have some shortcuts here for opening, saving, undo, redo. And then this is going to control some selections. So right now this is in our object type, and these are some common objects types. If we were to ever toggle any of these off, this is essentially masking us so that we cannot select that type. So in this particular example, this means we can't select mesh in our viewport by dragging to select. If we toggle this on here, this is going to open up our different components. So we can help us select our components by toggling this on or releasing and taking us out of certain component mode selections. Let's go over here. This is going to be our snapping. So we can snap whenever we're moving, scaling, or rotating, and we can snap to our grid, a curve, a point, the center of an object, image planes, or even a live object that we've assigned it to. Then we can go over here. This is going to be our symmetry. So we can have symmetry based off an object or the world or even topology that we define. This is going to select our inputs and output nodes depending on what we currently have selected. And then toggling this on or off is going to toggle on and off our construction history. This is going to control things with render. So some hotkeys, this is going to be our viewport mode. This one will control our render settings, render layers. And then this is going to open up our hypershade, which is what's commonly used when we're editing our shaders. Over here are going to be some numeric inputs. So we have some options to toggle between. This we can change its transform values, whether it's relative or absolute. We could rename things that we have selected, or we can even search for things or isolate our selection by typing in different names to find those in our scene. All right, let's go down to here. These are our shelves. So shelves are a great way to organize some of the most commonly used tools in each of these different disciplines. So if we have our modeling, these are some quick ways to drop in some mesh, some tools, and even over here are some UVs if we're UVing our mesh. Now these don't represent all things available. These are just the most common ones. And everything that you see on a shelf, you can find up in the menus if you dig around for them. You can also make your own shelf like I've done here. Let's do one together here. To make a new shelf, you open up the gear, do new shelf. Let me just type in something. I'll say things. And then to populate things in your shelf, you hold down Shift and Control and then click on any of these tools and you'll see that they're populating there in the shelf. When you're done creating your shelf before saving or exiting your Maya, I should say, make sure that you save all shelves. This is going to make Maya remember this shelf so that it'll be there available to you next time you launch your Maya. All right, let's go down to our panels. So these are going to be some panels. This is our outliner. A panel you can always toggle open or close when it's displayed like a tab like this. Panels also can be moved around. So we could tuck this into different places if we'd like and customize our workspace. Let me tuck this back into where it was. The outliner in particular, we also have a shortcut over here to toggle that visibility on and off. Panels have their own set of menus that pertain to whatever that panel is. Now, if you want to change your workspace, you can either pull things around and make your own, your own arrangement, or you might want to start with some of these ones that Maya set up for us. So if you're doing sculpting, for example, you might want to toggle over to the sculpting workspace, and that might give you some better options that you'll more likely use. Here, if you're an expert and you don't need any icons, shortcuts, or tools, you're just going to use hotkeys and markup menus. This might be the one for you. Also, good for you if you can do that. All right, so I'm put us back to our general. This is going to be the one that comes by default. If you rearrange everything in your file and you want to save that, we also have that option. We could save our current workspace. So Maya is very customizable to make everything arranged just how you want it. Okay, let's go over here to our viewport. First things first, let's talk about how we can move around in our viewport. So we're currently looking through our perspective camera. If I hold Alt and I left click here, this is going to tumble us in our view. If I hold Alt and right click, this is going to dolly us in and out. And Alt middle mouse is going to be tracking. Now, all of the times that I'm moving around, I'm actually moving the camera that I'm looking through. If I want to change my view by either panning or zooming and not moving my camera, then I have the option to use my 2D mode, which I can turn on over here as a shortcut. And when I'm in this 2D pan mode, if I use my backspace and I right click, that's going to allow me to zoom. And middle mouse is going to allow me to pan. Now again, I'm not actually moving my camera. My camera is staying still. I'm just navigating in a two-dimensional way what I'm zooming into or focusing on through my viewport. We can see down here that we're in 2D pan mode. If we want to toggle that off, we can hit that over there. All right, let's drop something into our scene so we can look through some other options that we have with our viewport. So I'm just going to go into my poly modeling and just drop a cube in really quick so we've got something here. And then let's talk about our viewport. So right now we have this set to our perspective view. If we go over here, we have some shortcut options of some other commonly used views or layouts. This is going to be with our 3 orthographic views, our top, front, and side, and then our perspective camera. We might also prefer this side-by-side layout view. And then this will take us back to our perspective. Now, if I want to just toggle between things, I can also use my spacebar. So here, my mouse over my perspective, if I tap the spacebar, that maximizes that view, maximizes the top, maximizes the front. Now, if I were to be in the side-by-side and I tap the spacebar, it's going to maximize and take me back out to the last layout that I used. We can also find other layouts here up with our panels. So in here, this is going to allow us to change what we're looking through if we want to change this to be one of our orthographic views, or we could also even make this our outliner. So this is going to give us some different view options here to even further rearrange this. In our our panels, we also have these other saved layouts. So even if you wanted to do something like a 3-pane split, this is going to get you started. And then you can change all of these to be whatever you'd like with your different views. So here I can set this to be our side. Here's our side as well. Awful example. Let's set this one to front. But we can rearrange this and make this whatever we'd like. We also have some other options of even changing this to be our hypershade, for example, or a graph editor, or other nodes that we might be working in at that time, depending on what we're doing in the pipeline. Let's go back over to here. And now let's talk about how we can view things inside of our view. So this is going to have us select whatever camera we're currently looking through. This is going to open up some camera attributes. So if we click on this, we now can see attributes connected to the camera that we're currently looking through. This will give us a quick shortcut to drop in an image plane connected to the camera we're looking through. We've already talked about our 2D pan. We also have the option to do a grease pencil. This allows us to draw two-dimensionally on our screen. This is going to toggle our grid visibility here. These are going to turn on some of our viewport options, especially when we're setting up our scene to get ready for rendering a shot. If we move over to here, right now we're set up by default with our smooth shade. This is going to be our default Lambert 1 shader that's going to be assigned to all geo as a default. We could also toggle on our wireframe view, or we could do a combination where we can have our shaded view with our wireframe also visible. These are going to be displaying whether we see our textures or our default texture, lights if we have any lights in our scene. And then we also have ambient occlusion and anti-aliasing if we want to increase or change the type of view that we're looking through. This is going to be our isolate select. If we have something selected, come on. Let me make sure here I'm in my object mode here. With my object selected, if I toggle this on, that's going to make it an isolate. Let me add another object to our scene so we can see this more clearly. So if I have an object selected and I isolate, it's now going to isolate my view. That does not permanently hide anything. That's just for viewport to help with just while we're modeling what's in our scene here. We can also view things with an X-ray mode. This is similar to a ghosting. If we turn off our wireframe, that option is available to us with our X-ray. This is going to control some options if we want to increase or decrease our gamma or exposure in our viewport. All right, and let's talk about some options now with our items in our scene. So over here at this toolbar, this top one is going to be our selection mode. I can drag and select. It's going to be a regular rectangular marquee, or I can click and select. I can also use these other selections. This one's going to be a lasso. So if I wanted to lasso select, I can do it that way. Or I can paint select. That's going to be more appropriate when we're dealing with components. Let me go back to my object mode. So here to get to object mode, I'm right clicking, and this is going to give me a markup menu that's going to pop up, and I can release on the mode that I want to be in. So back in object mode, now let's move down to here. This is going to be my move, also activated by W on your keyboard. I can move things in world space by selecting the middle, and that's going to move it in X, Y, and Z. Or I can click and highlight, and that's going to constrain me to whichever axis I have highlighted. I can also constrain in 2 axes. And now I can middle mouse and move about whatever I have highlighted. So if I click here, I can middle mouse without even clicking on the object. If I go to E, that's going to enable my rotate. I can rotate freely anywhere in 3D space, or I can click on any of these different rings, and that's going to constrain my rotation. And this blue outer one is going to rotate according to my camera. R is going to open up my scaling. If I scale from the center and I middle mouse, that's going to scale universally in all axes, or I can constrain it like we've done with our other tools. Let me go to now our channel box so that you can see all the changes that we've made over here. So this item, we've moved it this many units in the directions of X, Y, and Z from its origin, so where it was born, which was here, back at the 0 of all of our axes. We've rotated it these values, and we've scaled it these values, and it's currently visible. These values are representing from where it started, so if we want to bring it back to its original point, I could set the translations all to 0, the rotations to 0, and the scales back to 1. Now this is back to how it was when it started. We can also just type in values here if we want to move things a certain amount. The units in our scene by default are going to be centimeters, but we could change that if we ever wanted. This is going to be a shortcut to our preferences. And our preference settings, we can change our working units, along with a lot of other things in here. Okay, let me go back to selecting my object. That's our channel box. These attributes come in by default, but they can also be edited, removed, and new attributes created. We go over to our attribute editor, and this is going to talk about all of our input nodes that are connected to our object selected. They're going to display here as tabs. So this is our object here, our shape node connected, and then the last one is always going to be the shader that's connected to our object, which in this case is our Lambert 1 default. This is going to be our modeling toolkit. These are going to be some common tools that you might use while you're modeling. And then if I go back into the channel box, down here at the bottom is our display layers. If we have an object selected and I go under layers and I create a layer, this is going to give me an option to change some visibility and just some selections here in my viewport only. This is going to be if it's visible on playback. I can also set it to template mode, reference mode, or toggle it back to normal. I can change the colors connected to the wireframe and change its name. This is going to be some anim layers once you're ready for animation. And let's move down now to the bottom of our screen. This is going to be more things that really come into play once you're ready to animate. So this is going to be our time slider that we can scrub through. We can set our time slider either by typing in numeric values, so I can type in 100, and also I can display the range here by moving this dynamically, or again typing in values. If we want to play or playback, rewind, or any other common settings, we can do that over here. And then these are going to be some more settings connected with its volume, looping, or different playback options. If we have character sets or anim layers that are already established, we can use this to pull down any of those settings to toggle between when we're animating or rigging. This is going to be our frame rate. And then we talked about how this is going to open up a shortcut to our preference settings. And then down here, this is always what's going to give you some tips of if you're prompted to do something else within a tool. And here, this is where we could toggle between Python or Mel if we want to do any quick scripts. So if I move this over and I type in polycube, this is going to actually pop a cube right into my scene just using scripting. So if you have any quick commands, this can be a great way to just execute those quickly. Down here to the right is going to show you any results of anything that you've done, as well as any warnings or errors that are popping up, especially if a tool was not able to work. If you ever want to see a history of those things, you can open this up, and then you get your script editor, and this is going to be a list of everything that's happened. Here's what we've been doing. But then also you could add some scripts down here to execute those commands or those scripts. So if you ever have new scripts that you want to run, this is where you'd go. And then some options up here for executing, saving, and loading up those scripts. Let me close all that out. That should be everything to get you started. Happy modeling, everyone. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these demos, please subscribe to my channel.